first off, I'm in the wrong fantasy football league. Like, my gosh, it should be with all you guys, all you tech guys who kind of are creating these unbelievable experiences. We get none of that from my commissioner.
This is L&D Unlocked, a series for L&D and HR professionals looking to unlock the future of learning and development. Presented by BizLibrary, L&D Unlocked is an ongoing series where we speak to industry experts and thought leaders about the future of work, workplace trends, and how your organization can prepare today for the challenges of tomorrow. Learn more at bizlibrary.com.
Welcome to another edition of L&D Unlocked, the one and only series for L&D and HR professionals that are really looking to unlock the future of learning and development. You can find and subscribe to this series on our YouTube channel at BizLibrary, or head to our website at bizlibrary.com and you'll be able to find it there as well. I am very, very excited to introduce this week's special guest, Jo Otey. Jo is a generative AI and innovation specialist. He has consulted many, many clients on this very big and confusing to many term and area of generative AI and what it means. Currently for an organization called Capgemini, and previously worked for Microsoft, really consulting clients on this exact thing as well. So, Jo, with that, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me, Paul. It's definitely excited to talk a little Gen AI with you.
Yeah, the world that you're used to. So, where did your overall passion and your experience in this world come from?
Yeah, so I've always been just real big on just innovative technologies in general. But I mean, early on, got into doing some different dev work, and especially like understanding different industries where I saw like a gap in what technologies were out there, and it really kind of spawned off of a date at the time with my now wife. What we were out eating, and she was asking like one of the servers, like what he recommends, and I never understood that because like there's so many answers they could give that's going to be wrong because they don't know anything about you. Like I'm lactose intolerant, so I mean, you say anything with cheese, I'm like, oh well, that's not going to be for me. And it's like, but how would they know that? But there should be a better way to search this plethora of data to give you insights about information that exists. And that really got me down the road of trying to understand like why does this not exist? And there's just one of the things I learned is just there's so many moving pieces that have to be solved to even really understand what the crux of the problem is. But I mean, a lot of it's like the siloed data, the data that's just not transformed the way that matters, and then also then that subject matter expertise. And when you start talking about like machine learning and AI and now generative AI, it's starting to really bring those pieces together. So it's a very exciting time to, getting pretty close to solving my own first problem that got me into this industry.
I love that. I was going to say at some point you're going to have to develop some kind of solution to that problem with generative.
It's in the background. We are still working on it these days.
It's such a good personal example because I'm that person who I go to a restaurant and I ask the waiter, just because you do, what's good here? And I'm literally, once he gets through all the recommendations, I'm like, okay, but how are the French fries? Like that's literally, I wanted you to say French fries and you didn't. So I need you to
tell me about the French fries. That's actually what I wanted to know.
Yeah. And then how guilty do you feel when they give you 6 options and you choose like the burger?
Yeah, it's like the thing I looked at as soon as I got into here because I somewhat knew what I wanted to eat.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and I'm also the person who like Yelp is one of my favorite apps. Like that, because to your point, the closest I can get to looking at photos to figure out what I think's good and reading other reviews of people like me. So.
Oh yeah, but say Google reviews is probably like my go-to, but like I like looking at how they now are seeing start to break down some of the sentiment analysis, but kind of like understanding how people review stuff, but seeing those pictures. And I think that's because people want insights that seem like they're personal. I mean, that's the whole thing. You want personalized information. And I think that's where the crux of all of this is really coming to with generative AI. It's like you're starting able to curate information that's guided for you in a way that's not just an algorithm. It's also like something substantial that you can see and it's tangible.
Yeah, and experience it. Yeah, so let's start there, like at the most basic level, because I think, our audience is by and large, it's everyone from across the L&D and HR community, but a lot of, I'd say kind of both sides of the spectrum. HR teams of one, I think I should be experimenting with this because I'm hearing about it, but I have no idea where to start. I don't even have time. And then we also have, I'd say, people in the world of much larger teams that they're probably feeling pressure and getting questions from the C-suite saying like, hey, times are tough. We got to streamline. There's this new technology coming in that is ripe for potentially helping with productivity. We're trying to cost cut. We're trying to innovate. Like, look into this for L&D and HR. But for those that don't know one way or the other, how would you explain generative AI to like a kindergartner, the most basic level? You got a 6-year-old at home and they're like, what is this thing? What's ChatGPT? How would you explain that?
Yeah, I probably get asked that question the most, especially like a lot of friends or even like talking to some people at some of the companies that I work with. But I mean, like at like its most basic terms, I mean, it's like one of the world's best autocomplete. It's taking an idea, a prompt, and then creating something from information that already exists somewhere and compiling that together to give you back a response. And whether that's text, I think what a lot of people think of when you think about like Chat GPT, but then you also have things like images now with Stable Diffusion, Midjourney. People, are able to say what kind of picture they want to create something. But I mean, it's compiling information in some capacity that already exists and giving it back to you based off how you ask the question and other parameters in the context that it's given. I think that's kind of like making sure people kind of understand where generative AI kind of falls into the realm of AI and ML.
I love how simple that is. The world's largest autocomplete. And I think to your point, I do think everyone goes to ChatGPT, but whether it's image creation based on prompts or, we're using it interestingly and experimenting in other ways. Developers use it like crazy for auto completing code, in a number of ways. BizLibrary clients are going to start being able to experience basically, you can do content in different languages at scale. And believe it or not, the quality of that is actually like 95% compared to some other technologies out there. So it's pretty incredible. And then I also think about like the implications for video, being able to leverage, video creation from scratch when you kind of mix animation plus, the text piece.
Yeah, that's one that's really interesting. Like I kind of jumped on the Stable Diffusion bandwagon a while ago because I lucked out with being in that AI realm. I had a very nice desktop that could support a lot of the things that was needed for the GPU. And seeing where it is today from whenever I first started utilizing some of the image generation pieces, and now to the point that you could start creating video from absolute scratch, or being able to do like image to image or video to video and be able to change from like a live video to animation or vice versa. It's going to be very interesting to see how this technology evolves over the next year or so.
So let's go on the flip side of that. So that I think that was a really good example of what it can do, what it is good to be, used for. What would you say, like, what can generative AI not do? And what are the types of tasks or things that you may want to be more productive in that you should not turn to this as a tool for?
Yeah, so even circling back to the code generation piece, like generative AI is great for that, but the downside to that is if you don't know some of the fundamentals or basics when it comes to code, it's hard for you to actually know whether that code is good or whether it's going to work, or even to the point of if it's malicious in some way and will eventually cause you issues down the road. So like one of the best things you can do is kind of also try to understand what your code is actually doing and don't just like take it for gospel with working. That's for anything in the generative AI realm, because one of the things that's great, but then also can be an issue about generative AI is it's generating information that didn't exist whenever you put in that prompt. So it doesn't mean that's always going to be 100% accurate. And now we have different frameworks and tools to be able to add additional context and to get more of a guided response to give the information that we need when you want to need it. But just even a lot of the out of the box tools aren't that. They can do things like what's called hallucination and kind of just make up information that just is completely inaccurate. And people just need to be aware of that, understand, like, at the end of the day, it's a tool and you want to understand how to use your tools.
Yeah. Well, I think your example, your definition of the world's largest autocorrect is a good one, because is autocorrect always right? No. How many of us are frustrated when we're like, why does he keep thinking I want to say this word when I've never said that word, right?
Yep. I mean, especially because, I mean, like, if you're thinking about it, code generation, just coming back to that, like, it's trained on all these different places you can get code, whether it be from GitHub or different code bases or from Stack Overflow, as everyone kind of knows. And not all those answers are right. So there's going to be times where it's wrong because it's based off its training data of existing things that are already out there. Not every single thing, as everyone knows, on the internet is correct.
Yeah.
So some of the things in that's it's trained on are going to be incorrect as well.
I saw a few months ago an article where a lawyer was disbarred for basically they found out he had been doing all of his legal case research using ChatGPT, and it was feeding back false legal cases. But I think that what you just said made me think of that, because there are absolutely applications, and I don't even think necessarily that his intent was a bad one or a good use case, or expedite legal research. It's all about your level of knowledge and not relying on that as the sole source, and making sure that you're validating the information that's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point of like that particular case, and that's where we're kind of seeing enterprise and even like some developers starting to understand like things like RAG, retrieval of content and generated content. There's ways that he could have fine-tuned or embedded like a ton of law books and other things in precedent, and then created different prompts and other pieces to make sure that there was a less likely chance it had gone outside of his guardrails set to not have those hallucinations that would have put him there. But it's also understanding how the tools work and understanding how to best use them.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, let's shift to especially with the work that you do, kind of consulting clients on this type of thing all day, every day. I'm really fascinated with the dynamic going on right now of this disruptive technology and how organizations, and specifically for L&D and HR people, because I think they're such a key piece of that communication out to organizations around anything that kind of executives and the organization wants to say, and kind of their perspective and their values. I found it interesting. Just yesterday, an article: 54% of workers don't know their employees are leveraging artificial intelligence. So that doesn't surprise me at all. And I guess the question is, how are you seeing this play out in your work? And how can organizations kind of create safe spaces to not only test these technologies, but create better communication and awareness to employees without this feeling like something that's super scary and going to take their job?
Yeah, so I mean, even just like on the very basic level, to think about from like even prior to the pandemic, coming up to that, when people were starting to work from home and have these hybrid environments, and companies were worried about the tools they were using to like share documents, because like everyone was used to having everything like on premises, and then now there's cloud and people are able to just share with whomever. It wasn't about shutting that down. It was about educating people on the proper way to use these tools. And generative AI and AI tools they're really no different. It's understanding that you're going to have people who are going to want to use these tools, test them, or even put them into a production environment. So give them the parameters on which to look to do this, and have an understanding of how these tools can not only benefit and add productivity and even, employee satisfaction, but have them understand like where there is detriment and where it can cause security concerns, or where it can be affecting their job in a negative way. And the more that you put around almost like a center of excellence around new innovative thinking inside your environment, the more people are going to want to be able to use those tools in a positive way, but then more also that the company will actually have an understanding of how those tools are being used inside of their organization.
Yeah, you make me think of, like almost like an employee handbook. I've actually seen some organizations have that relative to what is acceptable to do your job. What are the functions you can actually leverage this tool for, and recommendations? And then what are the things that we never want you using using a chat GPT or something like that for? Especially, it's interesting. I think about the importance of data to this whole thing. And I know I'll plug, you've got an expert insight series for BizLibrary clients coming out all around this topic, and all of the use cases and kind of the do's and don'ts. And I think about the double-sided sword, I guess, for L&D and HR people. They sit on a ton of data. a ton of personal data, a ton of performance data, a ton of LMS and content and all of this data. And I'm kind of curious if you have consulted L&D and HR people and functions around some of that data as it relates to this, or kind of what your recommendations would be if you haven't, knowing what you know.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give an example of each because definitely have worked in both realms here. With HR, one of the things that I'm seeing the most is that, as everyone knows, and as you kind of mentioned, even with that handbook, I mean, how many times when you came onboarded somewhere and given a handbook or a PDF, and it's just everyone knows a ton of information, and it's like, how do you actually ingest that and make sense of it? We're starting to see some organizations doing what we call like modern enterprise search. So given the capabilities of embedding that information into a database, usually like a vector database, and then allowing for natural language style search. So the point, like you can like, how do I know where my vacation days, reside, or how do I like when do my healthcare benefits kick in, or I want to use Chat GPT. Like, is there anything that I should know? And using that style of search for people to be able to find the information they need inside the organization, and then also allows for them to be able to change policies or change information at whim and not have to worry about sending over an addendum to everybody, but they can just say, like, hey, there's been a new policy adjustments in this realm. If you want to look up, like, ask whatever questions you need. I mean, most people are used to natural language style search, but yet we've been geared to try to use a Google style search of like trying to hit certain parameters, adding your colon and your quotations, you're trying to look for something specific. This allows for people to be more organic in the way that they find information and also digest that information. I think that's just going to be such a huge piece as that kind of expands outward. And then even from the L&D piece, one of the things that I found really interesting is you mentioned on the aspect of language and being able to scale out content based off the language. The same thing is kind of happening on the other end of that as well too. Like when you're talking about that content's geared out, but being able to add that summarization, but then understanding if people, if you have like some kind of feedback loop from the video and content, to be able to use that as almost analysis for gearing people to like what other content should they be looking at and creating that recommendation engine from what would usually be a cold start. So you're looking at the keyword analysis, and then not only can you then recommend a guided learning path to someone, but with generative AI, you can also give context of why. So you can have it explain like, hey, these 3 videos would be good for you, and here's X, Y, and Z reason. And that's just something that just couldn't be done without having someone that had the time to write up that information, and then also had the subject matter expertise and the tech skills to give a reason of why that actually is real.
I was going to say I've done some work in a previous life building out internet function or intranet functions specifically, creating basically a website for internal use. And I had not thought about that as such a common use case. And I didn't even think I realized, to your point, like you had all these pie in the sky ideas. It'd be great if this intranet could do this, and this, content recommendations, all these things. Honestly, though, and the HR and L&D folks face this a lot, you often get a very finite, small amount of IT support, right? Or you're kind of the last project at the end of the list after all the client projects. So the ability to kind of create some of these things, I hadn't thought about an intranet search and how limiting that often is, but being able to basically do your job, which is to be more helpful and help people find relevant information in a much more practical and helpful way than they're probably currently doing.
Exactly. And I think that's what a lot of these tools, whether it's, AI, whether it's ML, the whole idea is to be able to take some like a functionality that is a pain point and be able to solve it in a way that actually is impactful to people. It's like you don't have to always look for that grandiose idea, but it's more of being able to solve something that can be just impactful to the people that use it. And then that allows for that person that maybe had to go around updating all this information all the time to be able to focus on the things that's actually productive to them as well. And then so it's a win for everybody involved.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, kind of along that line, I think you kind of just spoke to a little bit, but how are you seeing organizations use this tool or this technology to create better employee experiences and kind of better understand their employees, because I totally see a lot of applications for customers. But I think it's interesting. A lot of our audience is generally going to be more focused on kind of that employee experience and cultural improvements.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the big things, as we mentioned earlier, is that pieces like code generation and utilizing, generative AI and tools like VS Code and the co-pilots. So it's things that work alongside you in the way that you work, whether that's helping reconstruct your emails to sound more professional, or do one of my favorite tools right now that I utilize is for meeting summarization. So after the meeting, being able to take all the transcription and then be able to break that down into a summarization, action items, and then any kind of follow-ups that need to come out of that. And so it allows me to also be more attentive to the actual meeting itself, rather than trying to worry, did I take all the right notes? Did I have this? But be able to add some additional context to things that maybe even I missed, and then be able to take what I remember, take that together, and then use that to be more productive. So like literally using it as like an assistant, a tool. It's like something that helps augment my capabilities alongside of myself.
I love that. My personal use, it's almost like having your own personal assistant or person who can
Yeah.
research for you. As a marketing person, our team, when you're just not feeling creative, but you got to develop a headline or a blog idea or webinar name, it, even if you don't pick any of the ones it generates, it gives you that instant brainstorm. And honestly, it's interesting in the world of marketing. It's like, it seems counter to creativity. And if you're a great writer, it's like, no, I want to write my own stuff. I want it to be my own thoughts. I think that absolutely true, but sometimes it's kind of nice to get 60% of the way there and still add your personalization to that. And I think more and more people are realizing that as they get in and start using some of these tools.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely a good call out. So that's another thing that I love using it for as well too. It's great for brainstorming ideas, but even as people think that that it's taking over that work for them, they still had to curate that prompt in some way, and they might add context if they're using like ChatGPT, or if they're another like kind of enterprise example on that same level for like content generation. I mean, now there's ability to be able to take in past ads or past like tweets or posts that you've made, and use that as your context of like for your branding and how you create your marketing tools. And then whenever you add, for like, say you have a new product that you're trying to launch, you can give a basic description of the product. It can use your history of all your past products, how you do ads, the sentiment that came along with it, to help create product descriptions, help create ad copy, all based off also the medium that you're wanting to put on there. So there's ways to create pipeline around this. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what you're even doing when you're doing that brainstorming. It's like, it's not the thing that's usually going to be the final product, but it helps get from A to B a lot faster. But you still have to put the work into understanding like what is a good response that I actually need, and what is actually something that I know that I want to take to that next step. So like your subject matter expertise is more important than just the AI alone.
I love that. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about. I didn't know that you could do that relative to kind of your past content and give it examples and almost allow it to kind of judge and iterate with you. But I've heard that a lot. Like, the technology is only as good as your prompts. It's only as good as what you're teaching it as you provide revisions. And that's the strategic ownership of whatever that output is, right? You own
Yep.
whatever you end up turning in or using for your business. And there's a lot of very important value and strategic, human importance to that function.
Oh, very much so. And that's, I think people are always weary of any kind of new tool, and as you should be, and it's a good mind frame to be at. But there's nothing wrong with also being inquisitive and wanting to learn more. Like there's a good amount of skepticism out there and cautiousness, and you should be, but does it mean don't try to understand how the tool can work and what are the pros and the cons, and be able to understand like how it can actually help you in like your day to day, or even the services and tools that you use, understanding how they're using them as well too.
You know, absolutely agree. I think, making that personal for L&D and HR, what I hear time and time again, there's this push for strategic HR and the importance of, HR people having a seat at the table and being able to focus on much more high level strategic initiatives. But the reality of it is in that world, and same with L&D, right? You're taking requests from the C-suite, you're taking requests from departments. When you start asking really good questions about why do we need to do this? How's it tied to business objectives? Sometimes you're seen as difficult, or it's like, just do it. Like, I just want you to do the request, create the training,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So I think all of the departments in the learning development space are struggling with like, how can I show up as strategic? How can I focus on the projects that I know will help the business when I'm constantly putting out fires, right? And I'm constantly being reactive to what's happening. And so that kind of leads me to a question around that, because I do think, based on everything we've talked about, like, man, this is a tool that can really help you be more productive quicker, maybe on some of the things you have to do, so that you have time freed up to do more of that strategic work. But I'm curious your perspective. How can our community be at the forefront of generative AI in their organizations? And how can they position themselves? Because they often do have a seat at the table, right, in their realm, a CHRO or a head of learning and development. How could they position themselves as strategic and kind of on the cutting edge of new technologies like this with their C-suite?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and we kind of mentioned it earlier, the personalization aspect. Because when you are a company that has a lot of data, especially when it comes around what people are wanting to learn, what people are wanting to, start developing on, you're able to start curating more information about it, but also the more personalized aspect, like understanding like where are the skills gaps for the people who are at the table, or what the things they're trying to learn. Because like, you can put out all the content that you want, but unless it's personalized for the people that you're trying to target, it doesn't honestly matter. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you go on Netflix, the stuff that you're seeing isn't everything that's in Netflix. It's the stuff that's kind of geared toward you that you're most likely going to click on. And there's an engine behind that. And it's the same way with learning and development. You have the ability to know what people are already starting to, curate to, and like what they're starting to look at and what things are of interest to them. So it's easier to start creating new content, or content that they might be more receptible to based off this information. You can use AI and generative AI to not only help create that content and add additional information and insight, but also to learn about the people that you already have there and what things might interest them based off their demographic, based off their past history. Of I mean, there's just so much information that you can utilize to help curate what kind of content you guys should be bringing to the table.
Yeah, I think that also ties to, there's something to when you're fearful of something because it's the unknown. Knowledge is the key. Like, learn about it, learn away the fear, right? Like, and be educated on it. This to me is such one of those examples where I'm blown away when any of my managers or anyone in my department's like, hey, I just used it for this thing, right? It may not be the perfect thing, it might not apply to every use case. There's so much value though to me, and wow, you are curious, right? You're
Yep.
curious and you're trying and you're thinking about, maybe it's not a fit for everything, but you're thinking about the realm you control, the data sets you have, the skills challenges, or whatever the challenges the business is trying to solve. And you're trying this out to see if this could be a technology that can help you get further faster.
Yeah, I mean, like sometimes it really is just starting with like the art of the possible and getting people to understand not like everything it can do, but what it can do for them. And like a fun example that I sometimes show clients. So, commissioner of one of my fantasy football leagues for years, and created a website for our team a few years ago. But this last year, utilized generative AI to take all the different stats from starting from like our draft, but each week bringing down the stats, using embedding that into a database, but then pulling the information about how the games go to create a weekly preview and also a weekly recap of our fantasy football league. And then I also like trained it on like my type of speaking. So it almost sounds like me being the person that's giving the analysis for everybody.
Oh, that's
and
so
it's just
cool.
a fun little addition, but it's just like, this is something that, is easily created. That it now just runs on its own loop. Like, I don't do anything, but it adds value to our team, to our league. And it's just something like a little fun, but it's just like little things like that, and getting people just to think of like, oh, you could do that. Cause like people think about, just generating this text that's all different every time, but there's these different like frameworks and tools, things like function calling and a framework called like LangChain to be able to do specific functions. So you can tie into like SQL database, so you can pull off APIs. So it's not just always just you having to type a prompt and answer. It could still be in a pipeline of workflow to still get something that is utilizing this tool, but in a way that's, kind of out of the box thinking.
I love that. Hey, quick break. This is a good time to just reference quick cutaway to BizLibrary, our sponsor today. BizLibrary is the place for all things upskilling, compliance, leadership development. Check out this short advertisement.
At BizLibrary, we know that employee development and retention have never been more critical to your business. We help you build learning programs that create safe and inclusive work environments, elevate employee skills, and develop leaders who drive results. So now, you can take award-winning BizLibrary content and put it to work to help overcome your biggest challenges. BizLibrary, where learning happens.
First off, I'm in the wrong fantasy football league. Like, my gosh, it should be with all you guys, all you tech guys who kind of are creating these unbelievable experiences. We get none of that from my commissioner.
Have to jump on the new league.
Yeah, no joke. I absolutely love that. You made me think as we kind of wrap up here. Are there, outside of like your Expert Insight series for BizLibrary clients, are there other places you recommend? Because like what occurs to me is I would never have known you could do that. Like you mentioned, right? Like, or create some of these things. How could someone who's watching this right now upskill themselves on kind of all the possibilities? Like, I know you could kind of Google search and find prompts, but are there resources out there that you'd recommend that people could go to?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple different places. Of course, I'm gonna be impartial to my background, but Microsoft Learn's an absolute great place to get like some of that beginning like ideas around OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. But then Google's has their own library, and AWS is starting to launch theirs. But a really good place that I think is underutilized from people who aren't maybe in the tech industry, a site called Medium. I think a lot of people know it for some of the other content, but they have a lot of great tech content. And a lot of times they give very good examples, and it's even to the point like I need to have the free time to start putting up some of my stuff up there as well too. Because like a lot of times they'll link back to different GitHubs. Because like even for my fantasy football, I want to put that one out on GitHub so people can start to utilize and understand how it works for them. But a lot of times it's seeing other people who are starting to do that content, but it's knowing what you're asking for. So I always try to say start with like some of the basics. Even OpenAI on their site, they have a really good blog that explains things. But one of the great things about generative AI, if it seems a lot, you can copy that information down. If you have ChatGPT, throw it to ChatGPT and say, explain like I'm 5, and get a summarization of something that might seem, like over top of your thinking, and sums it down to, then you can start asking more questions and start gaining that knowledge, because it's really about just understanding what you're asking for. And it's no different than when you're using prompts in generative AI as well too. It's understanding how to ask is just as important as what you ask.
Yeah, I love that. That's really, really cool. So thank you for that. I think those are all great resources. Similar to you, I know Medium well, and I like their content. I wouldn't have thought to go to them for this kind of thing. So that's super helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so closing out with one question more about the future. I've been researching this topic. It was interesting. It took ChatGPT only 2 months to get to 100 million users. Yeah. And if you look at all technology over the last like 50 years, like the timeline's getting shorter to get to that. Like, it's out here, it's moving fast. What are kind of your predictions for the future based on what you're seeing and kind of your consulting when through the lens of, when we get into 2024 or this time next year, what will successful companies be doing and how will they be leveraging this differently than the companies that won't be successful?
See, honestly, I think it's no different than some of the other tools and things that came out. I mean, as we kind of talked about, like the whole idea of working hybrid or cloud technology, and then there's coming from my background in the food and beverage industry, like online ordering. There's still people that are always going to be behind the curve, but it's the people that can see a vision and really have an idea of the art of the possible. They don't have to necessarily know what it's going to take to get there, but they have an idea of what could be next. So like even with generative AI and a lot of these tools, like I still see it as like the whole idea is we're trying to eventually get to a point where we can augment some of the tasks that maybe seem more mundane, but then also just expand our ability to be inquisitive and find information that can make it valuable for us to continue a growth mindset and be able to expand our own capabilities. So, I mean, I think that's really the interesting part of it, because like one of the things that I love being able to see is people that, have never coded before. I try to write their first like programs. They had this system next to them, or people coming up with like these grandiose ideas to be able to brainstorm through those because of tools like this. So it's like I don't know if generative AI is going to be the end tool, but I know AI and ML is going to always be part of this journey, and it's really interesting and exciting to see what these tools are allowing for people to explore and come up with. I'm always just perplexed when I see like someone come up with an idea that I've never even considered or thought about, and seeing them put that into production, or even just like the thought process come out some of our like envisioning and working sessions at certain companies, and them solving these internal problems that have been such a hindrance on like their company. It's allowing people with subject matter expertise to really shine and bring their ideas to the table when they didn't have a seat at first.
I love that. Yeah, talking about subject matter expertise too, that should resonate so much with this audience who all day, every day is working with subject matter experts to share their expertise with a broader, group. And I think about the prompts. I think about the ability to take subject matter expertise content, put it through this, help work through that content. If it's super technical, ask them good questions. Like, it really is a kind of an assist for that kind of thing. And I also think about I like how you described it's just another thing. I mean, we all had to work through what is hybrid work and remote work. We've had to work through other disruptive technologies. You made me think it actually comes a lot more back to what kind of culture is your organization? Do they have a growth mindset? How do they approach things like this? And how are they helping you be successful utilizing it? That's just as important as your own personal opinion or how you work with it yourself.
It's exactly that. It's your outlook on innovation as a whole. Like what does it mean to you, and is it something that you want to grow into and explore? Is it something that you see as a hindrance, or it's like you're super cautious and scared, and it's how you want to take it on? But regardless, it's here.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, hey, Joe, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really knowledgeable, awesome session. I feel much smarter and knowledgeable about this topic just from talking to you. And, as follow-up too, we can send out some resources. People can connect with you on LinkedIn, and we'll keep the dialogue going. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the time, Paul. This was great. I always love talking with awesome people about awesome things, so I appreciate it.
This episode has been brought to you by BizLibrary. Head to bizlibrary.com for more information.